This episode of Loving You the Podcast is brought to you by Sony Music in the Orchard, home of Eleanor, Crazy for You, and the new top 5 record, Groove Dynasty's Somebody Loves You Back. All are available on all digital outlets. Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Welcome back to Loving You. It's been a minute. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you've had a great weekend and you're wrapping up your day, sitting down, having your favorite beverage, and getting ready to chat with Chris and I. Before we start anything, let me welcome him into the show. Hey Chris, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. How was your week?
My week was great, man. Just rocking and rolling, doing what I do, trying to make and move people forward.
And how was your weekend?
Weekend was crazy.
Well, like usual, right?
Yeah, real crazy this weekend.
Yeah, well, we're here. So today I thought, we spoke on the radio station a little bit about bringing romance back into a relationship. We get kind of stagnant. And I kind of promised our listeners that we would talk about bringing sexy back into a relationship as well.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. That was just last Tuesday.
It was Tuesday. So I figured this would be a good moment to talk a little bit about sex. Yeah, I know.
One of my favorite subjects. Got my attention.
Yeah, well, you just turned around and looked over at me, so I figured it did.
Yep, got my attention. So what part of sex, when we doing it? That's what we talking about. Well,
that's actually part of keeping sex sexy. You also, okay. you do, sometimes you actually, believe it or not, you have to make appointments for sex.
Nah, I don't know about appointments.
Yeah, you can pencil it in your calendars. If you've got children, you've got responsibilities. People can easily go a couple of weeks and not make time to be intimate with one another. So you pencil something in your calendar. It's like, okay, and be realistic about it. Don't expect, it should be something that both partners agree on. You may not be able to have sex every day, but it's like, all right, so this week we're going to have sex twice a week, which is pretty much the average for married couples. We're going to have sex twice a week. These are the days that we're going to do it. Oh,
okay. All right. Let's see how that works out.
Yeah.
I've never been on a schedule, so I don't
Well, I mean, and it's not like, okay, it's 7:30, it's time. But
no,
you just know.
That wouldn't work for me.
No,
it's
why
like
not?
My body doesn't function that way. I just gotta be in the headspace. I gotta be in the right environment.
What's the right environment?
It could be anywhere, but my headspace is really where it's got to be.
So you can't make a date. This is going to be our romantic night.
It might take a minute to get it started.
Well, I mean, actually, that's actually good too. Foreplay is really important, and the more foreplay, the better.
Yeah. It
shouldn't be, wham, bam, thank you, man.
I think that if you're going to get messy with it, then, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the fun, right?
Okay. All right. I'm working with it.
We should all get messy with it.
That'll work. Well, this is going to be an interesting topic. I'll chime in where I see fit. All
right. So one of the other things that's recommended is talk to each other about your fantasies.
Your fantasies. Wow. That can be crazy. That's a good thing if you could have that conversation. But sometimes the fantasy of the other person may be way past the bar.
Right. And if it's way past the bar, I would be very careful of how you bring that up. Make sure.
The approach is crazy because it's like, okay, this fantasy night, we can, Well, I don't want to be restricted though.
But the point of the fantasy,
you got to know who you with.
Absolutely, but by the time you're actually doing this and having sex with them, you should know who you're with.
Right. So you should know that this guy can be pretty wild.
Right.
This guy can be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
Not.
Or this is a vanilla person, and so we're good with vanilla. And there's different strokes for different folks, literally. Right. So, but yeah, so talking about your fantasies and then imagining how you could work those out.
Okay.
And
that's dope.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea to bring some spice back. It's like, I would really just hate to be like, hey, look, like there is this and there's that, and I know if we did this and we did that, and you hung from the chandelier, and then you looking at me weird, and I'm like, what? Like I thought we were fantasizing.
Well, I think that depending upon the level of the fantasy that you're creating, it would be nice to create a fantasy with your partner, not necessarily a fantasy with somebody else.
No,
And,
it's not about someone else. It's about,
hanging off a chandelier. Well, as long as there's a good enough hook there, it's going to hold me and it won't kill me. I mean,
Oh, okay.
you have to be a little bit open-minded. And this, like I said, different strokes for different folks. Some people may not particularly like this.
Right.
You want to keep your fantasies to yourself, but it's kind of fun to share them with your partner.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. That's I still think that, hey man, this could go off the rails really fast, But I really think you have to know your partner, man.
Right.
You really got to know how far you can really go.
And before you've gotten to this point, and this is something that I will keep reinforcing and pushing it. You keep pushing that intimacy. You keep getting closer and closer. And you create a really intimate relationship so that you can talk openly about fantasies.
Right. Without judgment.
Right. The bedroom should always be a judgment-free zone.
Yeah, it should be. That's
part of intimacy.
In theory.
Right. So that's why, in order, probably the most important thing you need to have a good sexual relationship is to have a really good intimate relationship.
Yeah.
That has to be developed.
Okay.
Be open about what you like.
Open about what I like.
Yeah, what you don't like. Know your body, just for starters. Know what pleases you so that you can share that information with your partner.
Right. And sometimes even if you can't share it, you just guide them to it.
Or you can show them. Share it or show it.
Yeah. Show and tell.
It's the game we play.
That's crazy. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I'm really batting 100 right about now, though.
Yeah, well, you like everything that's related to this, except maybe sharing your fantasies.
I'm just, and I like sharing my fantasies. It's the person that I'm sharing it with. Can you handle where this creative mind goes?
Well, yeah, so.
And how dark do you want it to be?
So speaking of dark, so you say dark, I'm thinking of like some really sexy vampire type thing.
No. I'm talking about, threesomes, foursomes, that's dark.
Oh, that type of dark.
Yeah.
No,
But there are people, this is the norm, and this is what they do. And so, they're like, yeah, let's have a threesome, and better yet, let's invite Debbie. She could come through.
No, don't invite Debbie unless it's another Debbie. But yeah,
right. It's like she could come through, but then there's people that's way too far.
Right, and so, and that's why you need to know your partner.
Right.
And once again, we go back down that path.
I think the challenge here is that people don't communicate. Especially in today's time, people don't communicate that at that level. They just kind of.
What do you mean at what level?
At that intimacy level, with a sexual part, where these are my fantasies and stuff like that. I think it takes a long time at this point for people to really just be that open.
Well, yeah, you have to build to this, and that's why the whole concept of this is bringing it back into a relationship or starting a relationship. But you don't really.
We ain't bringing it back yet. We got to get it started.
Right. Well, that's true. That's true.
Ain't nothing to bring back.
No, but I mean, if let's say you've been married or you've been in a long-term relationship and everything's kind of just gone by the wayside, and that's not something you put focus on.
So how do you approach that? Let's just say I've been in a relationship 15 years, and I'm feeling like things are kind of in slow motion. How do you approach that? Hey, let's sit and talk, and I got some things I want to explore with you.
Right. Well,
how do you approach that?
A good time would be during your relationship check-in. Which you should be doing periodically, and not just about sex, but just about your whole relationship. And so that would be a good time to say, I'm not feeling it. I think that we're kind of drifting apart sexually, and I'd like to see if we bring things back together. And then you start integrating some of these tips that I'm giving.
Oh, okay.
What do you think about sharing your fantasies with me? Or, hey, what about role playing?
Role playing.
Yeah. So
give me an example.
let's see.
I know what role playing is for me, but give me an example from the relationship coach.
An example, I mean, that's part of what your fantasy would be, but let's say like, the sexy nurse, male or female, with a patient, or the stewardess or flight attendant. Let me put that correctly. The flight attendant with the pilot. Or you decide we're going to role play out in public.
Now, what does that look like? You'll put on a wig?
Well, you can.
Okay.
I mean, the whole thing would be let's say you decide we're going to go to XYZ bar, but we're not going to go together. We're going to meet there, and it's going to be like, I've picked you up at the bar. So you dress women very sexy. You're going to a bar to meet somebody. It's not your partner.
Right.
And your partner comes in and picks you up, and you just role play like you've just met, and you let this role play go to a bar where you don't know anybody. So you let the people around you just kind of, people are always listening in and looking at. I do that. I watch other couples.
Those people right there, they just met, and this guy's being obnoxious. He's whispering things in her ear.
Well, she doesn't seem to be she's not pushing him away.
No,
she seems to be encouraging him.
So maybe we should get with that.
Right. But that the point is, and then you come in together. You come in separate, but you leave together.
Right.
And so it's just that kind of thing. Just bringing different aspects of. And if you're playing in a game and you're really into role playing and you're using your imagination, you can actually take it to the point where, okay, let's just go to a hotel, and we'll spend a night in a hotel.
Okay.
Instead of going back home.
That's what's up. That all sounds good, Lopez.
Yeah, sounds interesting and fun.
Sounds interesting. I don't know how many people would actually do that, but okay, it sounds very interesting.
I would do it.
Okay.
I really would. I think it's fun. Do it in different places.
Do it in different places. Like the Mile High Club.
You could do the Mile High Club. That might not be very comfortable, though. But
hey, man, we're not talking about comfortability. We're talking about doing it. Sometimes you're going to get your head beat up against the headboard or in the bathroom or something.
Well, so that's the point. Doing it someplace different would be, instead of always the same bed, same place, maybe in front of the fireplace. Put out some really thick blankets in the wintertime when it's nice and cold.
I'm thinking more of the countertop, right where you be cooking at.
Well, yeah, I mean, leaning over the countertop or sitting up on the countertop or bathroom, having sex in the shower.
And be like, let's do it in the car.
Oh, yeah. You got to be really careful where you do that.
There's secret places now. There's secret places, little hideaways that you could slip off to.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sure there are.
We spot them all the time. We just don't pay attention, or we're not in that thought process.
No, I'm a little too old to have sex in the back seat of a car. But, you could start there.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying the hood works pretty good. Once it cools down,
that's what I was going to say.
Once it cools down, you'll be all right.
Very important, and I think we kind of touched on it briefly, is the importance of foreplay. It takes a woman about 20 minutes to really get into the moment.
Well, now that we're talking about foreplay, I just think that, foreplay is required at times. And then there's other times you just want to get to it. It's like, I just want to get to it, And
but what about your partner?
She want to get to it too.
Okay, well, as long as, both partners are in accordance, that's fine. But if you want to have a really, and sometimes, a quickie great, but.
No, this ain't no quickie. I just want to get to it.
Foreplay is always going to make it sexier. Touching, kissing, stroking, all those ings, that's going to make it better. Even if you want to really get to it, just give yourself a moment before you get to it. Ask your partner. Ask women. Most women, most times, would
I'm glad
rather.
You put the most on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be that one-off moment where it's like, okay, whatever, let's just do it. But most of the time, what we want is to be courted in the bed. You know? Now, once we're courted and you know, there's the foreplay and the kissing and all that wonderful stuff, then, and the woman is actually becoming more aroused because it takes us a little bit longer, then it's no holds barred. So.
No comment.
Yeah, I see that. Considering what we're talking about, you're being very quiet.
No, I'm not being quiet. I'm thinking about situations as you present them, and I'm like, you know, that's cool, but foreplay, you know, 20 minutes, you know, it's like you know, and it depends. If you hadn't seen your partner in a week, hopefully she won't get to it.
Well, but remember, foreplay doesn't start like we take off our clothes and we're in bed and this is foreplay. Foreplay starts before you even get to the bedroom.
But I haven't seen her.
I
haven't seen her. So what?
So what? You're gonna just come home and like throw her on the bed and that's it?
No, but I'm just.
I mean, at least like give her a kiss and you know, hey, nice to see you again.
I'm kissing you as I take my clothes off.
Well, right? No, that can be really sexy as well. But I'm not talking about foreplay like we spend. You're not going to set off your timer. And you're in bed, okay, I'm going to kiss you for 5 minutes, and then I'll touch you for 5.
Foreplay, I don't have no concept of time.
Foreplay should start right after your last sexual encounter. And so I'm going to ask you a question, Chris, and let's see if you can answer this one. What do you think the biggest sexual organ is?
My joint. I'm just kidding.
I knew you were going to say that. I set you up.
No. I know you thought I was going to do that. But
of course.
It's the brain, of course.
It's the brain. So
everything starts and stops here.
Right. So, and that's why foreplay isn't necessarily, although touching and kissing and touching intimately is very important as well. Foreplay can also be just the thought of it and maybe talking about it and, you know, calling your girl in the morning when you get to work and it's like, I got here and I was thinking about you and I'm just so turned on by you I'm not going to say, but it would be really sexy, but you know, or the girl calling the guy and saying, I've been thinking about you all day and I just can't get that thought out of my mind.
But, you know, I mean, it can go a little bit further than that.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, you know, yeah.
Well, I mean,
like, you know, I'm throwing all kinds of stuff in my head, and you know, it's like it can go from just a phone call to, hey, look, what are you doing right now?
What are you wearing
right this second?
Yeah,
touch yourself.
Yeah.
Just messed you up.
No, I'm just thinking, yeah, depending on where I'm at, because if I'm sitting in my office, that might not be a good thing.
I'm just saying, if that's, you know, if I ask the question, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm chilling. Okay, I got something for you to do. Okay,
well, that's fine. And so, once again, that's using imagination and creativity. And that's part of foreplay.
Yep.
It's a really big part of foreplay, which kind of ties into one of the other big things.
What's that?
Not that. Dirty talk.
I love dirty talk.
I'm not surprised.
This is a rarity because, you know, a lot of people say they want dirty talk, and they just really be talking about, you know, the dirtiest it gets is like the F word. And I'm like, that's not dirty talk. Let's really get grimy.
Well, and so if you're with a partner that likes that, that's great. The problem is
I couldn't probably be with a person that, you know, is super quiet, don't say nothing. That would be boring to me. That would be boring. Like, what are we doing? Are you still living? Give me a mirror. Let me put it on your nose.
Well, hopefully, even if they're quiet, there's some type of, maybe they're not talking dirty talk, but they're making other noises.
Nah, you know, I mean, I want the whole experience, you know, and so if I'm going to engage, I want the whole experience.
Right, and so I agree with you, but
because I don't want to feel like you doing, you know, the worst thing that could ever happen for me, I'm not saying for anybody else, but for me, if I ever feel that you're doing me a favor, oh my God, I don't even want it. So engage. You got to be engaged, man.
Doing you a favor by having sex with you?
Yeah, like, oh, I don't really feel like it, but is this about you? And I'm like, nah, I don't want it. Yeah, I'll pass.
Well, that's not necessarily a favor. That could just be, you know what, I'm not really into it. Get me into it. Put me in the mood. And if not, today will be about you. Tomorrow will be about me. So that's just, fair play.
I don't know. We'll come back. We'll put a pin there.
Yeah, we can put, it's, and you're right. Sex should never be about doing favors for one another. But, you've never heard of sexual favors?
Yeah, with the
like, honey,
with the
if you
girl
do
at
this,
my office. I'm just kidding. That would be a favor. I don't want to have a favor with my partner.
No, but it's like, okay, baby, what is it that you want? I think it all depends, because sex shouldn't be, it's not a commodity, but at the end of the day, it's also something that, you can play around with it. And so it's like, well, I really need you to mow the lawn today, clean out the garage, go up into the attic and put all my Christmas stuff away there. What would you like? If you do all that for me, what would you like? And what is the first thing a guy is going to say?
Well, a guy every 5 minutes is thinking about sex
right.
in most cases.
So he's going to say what he wants. And so she'll say, all right, baby.
And be like, no, if I'm going to get up in that hot attic in the middle of the
Just
summer.
shower first.
I'm going to need you to handle this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm really going to need you to do that.
And then that's fine. So let
me get to marching.
That's the playfulness of sex.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm
so
it's not a favor. It's just
a favor is like, I ain't really into this. I just say wait. It's
right.
Like,
well,
okay.
and both partners. And that's, once again, we'll go back to foreplay. Sometimes your partner may not really start off in the mood, but you can always put them in the mood.
Okay.
And so, and getting back to the dirty talk for a moment, that's something that you get to know what your partner likes. And I would recommend that you start slow.
Slow?
Yes.
What is slow?
Well, you want to throw everything out there and all your fantasies and use, I don't even know. You've used the WAP a couple of times on the radio show.
No, but I wouldn't tell my partner about the WAP. That wouldn't work. No, that's just records, like there's a record called WAP.
Right.
But, so I'm just kind of playing from that. But in a real situation, I'm not talking about no WAP. But I am saying things, I'm like, how does this feel? What
right.
Explicitly, how does this feel? And this has a name.
Well, right.
So it's like, but being comfortable enough that you could just let yourself be, knowing that it's received on the other end
right.
as it
and
was
so
meant to be.
That's kind of like going back to the no judgment zone. So for a woman or a man to be able to say these words and open up that way, there has to be a no judgment. You have to be able to open up and say these things, and in the heat of a moment in a fight, your partner's not going to throw in your face, well, you said this and this and this. What are you, some kind of a whore?
Oh, I almost choked. I was looking for one of those. I almost choked, man. You almost made me choke. It's not that. And I think that if anybody is throwing anything in anybody's face, then it wasn't genuine in the first place. And so
Very
that stems to another conversation.
Yeah, and so,
maybe a final conversation.
Yeah, like the final warning, right?
No warning.
It's like we're done.
We're pretty much done. Because if you're using that against your partner, then we have bigger fish to fry.
That's very true.
When you're fighting, that's the first thing that comes to your mind. Or if that's your default setting, then it's like you've been collecting all this intel.
Oh, right. To use it against me. Absolutely.
So it's like, nah, I'm cool.
So that's not truly an intimate relationship there.
No, that's a game.
So how about this? You have a no sex day.
A what?
A no sex day. So we have a date or a day where, okay, we're going to get in bed and we're going to get undressed and we're going to kiss and touch and maybe massage and stuff, but we're not going to have sex. Just to heighten the anticipation. You just looked completely away that's not going to work for you?
I'm sure that there's somebody that'll work for it.
It's something to try.
I don't know. Never did it. So let me not throw
Right.
darts
So
at it.
that could be something.
I never did it. So.
That could be something that you all try. If you want to bring back a little bit of just kind of like anticipation, like, oh my gosh, I really want you. You spend a night where you just don't do anything but that. And it's like, all right, good night, baby. And maybe in the morning when we wake up, it'll be a different story. But this is what we've decided to do for tonight.
Okay. And when should we be doing this? We're talking about 10 years plus, right?
No, we're talking about whenever you want to just spice up your sex life.
Oh, okay.
Do things a little bit differently.
I think it's
So sex columnist Don Savage says that there's something called the 3 G's for good sex. One is be good. So practice.
Good?
Practice. You have to be good at what you're doing. So you define what's good for you. That's between you and your partner.
It's pretty subjective, you know. It's
exactly. So I can't tell you what's good because what's good for me may not necessarily be good for you.
Okay.
But you know how we all define good in sex?
No, I don't.
How it ends.
Okay. All right. We're going to keep it PG. Keep it moving.
So be good, be giving. So, be considerate, be conscious of your partner. To me, sex it's all about pleasure, and it really should be. It should be about receiving, but don't forget that you want to give pleasure too. Don't be a selfish lover. And last but not least, be game, which that means be game to try new things. Like you said, swinging off the chandelier.
No, that's extreme.
Maybe, finding a remote beach and some sexy spot on a beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something like that. Be game for new, as long as you're not allowing yourself to step over boundaries that you've established. Be open to new things. Be open to try different things. It might be using a toy. Maybe you've never used one before, and it's like
there's a lot of guys that are afraid of toys. Because it's like I feel that it'll replace them, and I'm like, nah, man, that's the spice.
It could enhance. But that's something, once again, it's something that has to be between the two partners. You have to talk about it. And if it's a concern, address the concerns about, okay, so we bring a toy, I think it's going to replace me. Well, there's nothing that's ever going to replace the physicality of being with someone and, the touching and the warmth of human skin and that type of stuff. So, but if it's something that's concerning, then that's something that I would certainly recommend that you bring it up before you use it. And
don't be looking at me like that. It's required. Don't be doing me like that. Looking like, well, if that's something that really bothers you and you're looking directly at me.
Because there's no one else to look at. I'm talking
saying, look
to
at the
you.
Wall, look at somebody else.
No. I can't look at the wall. I got to be looking at you.
Don't know. It's required.
What's required?
Toys.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you got a toy box?
Yeah, I know. But
what are you, like
one.
Christian Grey?
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. Not that extreme, but yeah, I like keeping spice in the mix. I love, taking things slow because, unless you find someone that's just like you, then you can just go full speed ahead. But when there's somebody that's basically been in a vanilla relationship, you got to take it a little slow.
Right. And and even if they're not.
Even when you're having a talk about it, you got to take it real slow.
Right. And so even if this is not a vanilla person and their sex hasn't been vanilla, if it's a new person that you're being intimate with, I would suggest, and it's someone that you're starting a relationship with. If it's just a booty call, whatever, that's a whole different thing. But if it's someone that you're starting a relationship with, you want to have these conversations before you do anything, before you don't show up in bed with a bunch of toys, without having had the conversation of, hey, what do you think about trying this? And, your partner should be in agreement. And it shouldn't be, that's to me where it would be a favor. Well, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do you a favor. Go ahead, use it.
Nah, man, I kick you out of bed. Get up out of here with that, man. Because it's got to be a natural progression. It's got to be
right.
It got to feel natural to me. Like, yeah, she really wants to get this. She want to get at this. She really wants to try this, or she's really excited about this. I want to feel that energy.
Right, and so you grow into that in a relationship. That doesn't happen the first time. You know, you this is something that you grow into and you bring it into a relationship. And aside, not just toys, just everything else. You know, you're not going to start a relationship bringing all this to the table. You do it in increments. And so mostly these things I'm talking about are people that want to bring it back to a relationship. But
not only bring it back, but bring it back like 2.0.
Right. And so maybe you've never had it.
The
and
great
so,
version.
Chris Scott and that movie with the books and the movie were just like, that was amazing how it took off.
Yeah, it did, because there were so many people that had, you know, the Christian Grey vibe in their head, but they couldn't say it.
Right.
You know, and it was guys and girls.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there was a whole bunch of women that bought the book.
More women bought the book. I don't think men bought the book. I think that was a woman thing, and that is what was so surprising, because it's a dominant male. So it was very surprising that women were, in this day and age when we're talking about equality and feminism and everything, so many women were turned on by the idea of this guy.
Well, guys already got it going on in their head.
Oh,
already figured that
right,
out.
right. You know,
like,
and some people still. It doesn't matter about the book. Some people really aren't into that, and that's okay too.
Yeah, you know, we're talking about people that are into bringing it back and into enhancing. You know, but we're generalizing through this.
So, I guess the most important thing would be to relax. You know, the best sex is the one where you're not stressed, where you're relaxed, where you're enjoying each other and you're enjoying each other's company. And if you start there, all the other things that we've talked about, you can start bringing them into a relationship and have great sex.
Yeah, relax, chill. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah, I'm with that. Relax. Don't worry about the stuff that's coming out my mouth right now. Just relax. I got you.
Well, yeah, I don't know what you meant. What's coming out of your mouth?
Nah, but
you mean the words?
I mean, it can be a lot of different things coming out of my mouth.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
You know, I just really think that, you know, I'm speaking about words at this moment. Just relax, chill. You know, we're gonna get through this, and I promise you, it's gonna be a great experience. And
right.
I'm gonna push your boundary. I won't cross your boundary.
And that's very important. Because once you cross somebody's boundaries, they stop trusting you. And so that's why it's very important. Everybody always says that it has to be two consenting adults. You know, you have to be consenting to this. So if there's anything that anybody's recommending or wants to do or is trying to push you to it, and your inner gut is telling you, I don't want to do this, don't do it until you're ready. And if you're never ready, your partner should appreciate that about you.
Okay. So what else is on that beautiful list of yours?
No, that's about it. I mean, I think that we just going back quickly to games, have a sexy game, just the two of you. Like
card game, strip poker.
You could always do that. I know that you love that game.
Yeah. I love poker, period. But we could flip it, instead of winning money.
Yeah.
We're losing clothes.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But you do something like that, or, you know, go out with your partner to a party or something and go commando. And so you'll be looking at your girl across the room, talking to people and everything. And when you make eye contact, you'll remember she's not wearing panties. And so when you have all these great sexual experiences and you play these games and you do all these different things, you have great stuff to talk about because you're creating these really sexy memories.
The problem is, you know, is that, you know, people that engage in this kind of activity, and then they can't talk about it. You know, it's like, we're going to leave that in the bedroom. No, let's talk about it tomorrow. You know, because we can refine it if we talk about it.
Well, absolutely. And that's why it's really important to be comfortable with your body, comfortable enough with your body where you can tell your partner, this is what I like.
Out of all that you just did, I only like this part.
Right, exactly. This was the best part. I don't know. I'll do you a favor and let you do it again.
No, I don't want you to do me no favors. You know, it's like, just be straight up. You know, I just feel like, you know, when you got that magic, you got that chemistry, because that's the piece that I think that any man with a penis can have sex.
Absolutely.
You know, but it takes a real man, to really get in the head and really be able to control that brain a little bit, flip it a little bit.
Whose brain?
Any woman's brain.
Oh.
But you got to pay attention. You got to know what's going on. You can't just be there for your own pleasure.
No, and so it works both ways. You know, a woman needs to be very aware of her partner's needs and what he likes and what, you know, the way he likes to be touched or kissed or spoken to. So it works both ways.
Did you know that ooh and ah sounds the same in every language? Did you know that? I mean, it just crossed my mind like... Ooh and ah sounds the same in every language. It doesn't matter what language you speak.
Okay.
I was just asking a question. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but
You probably never thought about that.
But thank you for putting that in my head. Okay.
It just popped across my mind.
Yeah.
Like, ooh and ah.
So there you go, ladies and gents. You know, you can make love with anybody across any island.
As long as ooh and ah.
We're good.
Oh my God, that's funny. That just crossed my mind.
Very creative,
I don't know why
Chris.
I thought about that.
I don't either, but okay.
I guess this is getting a little steamy. I was thinking about
ooh
and
ah. Okay.
That would sound good in any language.
It would, depending on who you're with, absolutely. So, you know, these are all little tips, and you have to do what works best for you, and you don't have to do all of them. I recommend that you, if you haven't done any of these, try at least one.
Start slow.
Well, yeah.
Start slow because, this is not for the faint at heart.
No, but who wants to have a faint heart when you're having great sex?
Nah, man, but, this... Do you know that... Now, this is very serious.
Oh.
There's a lot of people that don't want to have sex.
Okay, and
you
so...
know what I'm saying? It's
but
like,
and there are. And if you are a person that doesn't want to have sex, you're probably not listening to the show.
But maybe I'm just being nosy, checking it out.
Okay, well, so if there's anybody out there listening to this show that doesn't want to have sex, try it. You'll like it.
And then,
with the right
there's
person.
people that, have headaches and all that kind of crap. It's like...
Yeah, and so that's another thing. We shouldn't be lying about it. If we're not in the mood, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, baby, I'm just not in the mood today. Could we just cuddle? I've had a rough day, and that's why I said it's so important to be relaxed.
Somebody like me would probably ask another question, though.
What? Oh, if I say, can we just cuddle?
Yeah, I'd be like, what's wrong? What you feeling?
Yeah, and it's like, I've just had a long day. I've had a hard day. I'm tired.
Okay, so what did your dentist say?
Why don't you massage my feet? Huh?
What did your dentist say?
My dentist said, keep your mouth closed.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm gonna be out on that one.
Yeah, so we'll let you be out on that one. So most important thing for all of this is make sure you've created an intimate relationship.
I'm just playing. I mean, like, you're tired or whatever. I'm just playing. If you don't feel well. No, but seriously.
Yeah,
I don't want to leave with that.
Okay, so
I don't want to
please
leave
don't,
with
because
that.
I don't want people to think that you're like...
I don't want to leave with that. What I'm going to leave with is that hopefully you're like me. If a person is not feeling it, then you don't want no parts of it. You just wait till a later date.
Right.
Hopefully you're really like me.
Yeah, no, and you should be.
I was just poking fun about the dentist thing, but, at the end of the day, that wouldn't even, if you was like, nah, I'd be like, well, nothing else working. Yeah, I'm out. It's like...
And you tap out, and then there'll be another day.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the importance of having an open relationship where you can have those conversations and not feel like your partner's going to be upset or hurt or angry or frustrated. I mean, now if it becomes a pattern, then that's something that you would need to address. But we all have off days where, we're really not in the mood. And there's nothing wrong with saying that.
Yep, I agree. That's what you should say. And people should respect it. I did have one more comment, but I'm going to pass on that one right now because we're out of time.
We are out of time, but I want to take a quick moment to thank you all for joining us this Sunday. I hope that the topic was something that was relevant and that you'll use some of these tips and tricks. I also want to remind you to please reach out to me with any questions or comments at Debbie Lopez at Instagram.com or Debbie Lopez at Facebook. Please join us in the next 2 weeks where we will be talking about trust, how to build it, and how to rebuild it if you've lost it. Until then, live in love. And this episode of Loving You, the podcast, has been brought to you by Sony Music in the Orchard, home of Eleanor, Crazy for You, and the new top 5 record, Groove Dynasty's Somebody Loves You Back. All are available on all digital outlets.